them early on, it would lead to a happier, more unified, more peaceful planet for us all. And it's a lesson that I've tried to teach these kids every time we're in chapel together. When we go over each of the weekly virtues, I try to find new ways to explain what they mean and emphasize that embodying each virtue in that way effortlessly changes the experience of everyone around them. And I often tell the kids, you've heard this, right? You probably get tired of hearing me say that you can change the world, but it's true. And I believe it with every atom of my being. I know, parents, thank you for coming out. I know it's inconvenient to come a sixth day in the week, but we only ask for a few hours of one day in a year. So thank you so much for humoring us. It's important for all of us here on this side to see what our vision as the founders of the school, what it's become through the decades. So thank you. Starting next year, and I brought this up a bit to Mr. Kim over there, Mr. Spurrier. He's awesome, by the way. If y'all haven't met him, take a chance. That guy is pretty incredible. I'm just saying. So what we put together, the idea that I threw out, I'd like to be able to showcase some of the kids' art projects and their poetry and visual media and their talent during this service, because we're here to celebrate all of the kids, not just a handful of people getting awards. And I also thought it would be really cool to have a kid do the presiding. So Elf, you will not be presiding next year. There will be a Barnhart student up here doing it. So parents, Tim, I was going to say teachers, but Tim, spread the word. Let's turn this quick tradition that we have into something truly memorable for the kids of Barnhart. Let's make sure that they feel seen and appreciated for who they are and how they express that in the world. Okay? Now, I will move on to the topic at hand. So let's get into this moment. And this moment. And this one. Let's stay together in the here-ness for every moment. Does it sound like I'm talking funny? I am, but it's for a reason. This is the second of 5 talks about what it means to be in the now. What it means, why it's important to creating your best life, and hopefully how to get there. And then we're moving into 5 weeks on judgment. So when you're living each moment, you're not opinioning all over the place and getting in the way of the joy in it all. Every opinion, whether we consider them good or bad, is judgment. And believe it or not, that can really get in our way. After that, we're going to do 5 weeks on moving past ego, because we'll be in the now, free from judgment, and we want to eliminate those checks and balances we keep, eliminate the belief in our offenses and defenses, and silence that I, me, mine voice that we all have, right? And then finally, we're going to spend 5 weeks surrendering and relaxing into forgiveness so that we can make bliss our life experience and find ourselves completely transformed. So last week we explored what it means when all of those brilliant, inspiring minds talk about the now. What it is, why, and how each of us is not in it most of the time. In fact, according to one of the brilliant minds we quoted, many of us haven't stepped a single foot into the now since birth. That is an interesting realization. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, visit our Facebook or YouTube or our website and listen to the recording of last week's live stream, because the people who are here already heard it. And they don't want me to do it again. Do you?
No,
not so much? Okay. So for those of you who were here this week, you know that every time you're thinking, or for our purposes today, we'll say every time you're in your mind, for whatever reason, you're not here. By which I mean you are living somewhere in the past or the future in your mind, not here, right now, in this present moment. And remember, the past is done and the future will never arrive. The moment it does, it's in the past. Right? There's only the present. And it's important to be fully in the present if we want to experience all that life has to offer. Does this mean that it's wrong to think? Or that it's wrong to try to be ready for whatever the future holds? Absolutely not. It's wonderful to exercise your mind in all sorts of ways, but when you're replaying past heartbreak or trauma or letting that get in the way and determine how you interact with the world around you, or when you're worrying about stuff that hasn't happened yet, whether it's bills you have to pay or a dream vacation you've got planned or a birthday party you have to shop for, you're not fully aware of what is actually happening around you. I mean, you've got the general idea of what's going on, kind of like the periphery of your awareness. Just like we're aware of the letters on a page when we're reading, we can see that they're there, right? We know that that page is full of letters, but we don't yet know what those letters say because we can only understand the words we're looking at. So when you're constantly looking at your thoughts, you're not truly seeing what's happening within the moment. And it's when we're really focused within each moment that we truly begin to experience life with a capital L. On page 22 of his book, Practicing the Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, hold on, we're having more technical difficulties. I'm good. Eckhart Tolle says, as you grow up, you form a mental image of who you are based on your personal and cultural conditioning. We may call this phantom self the ego. It consists of mind activity and can only be kept going through constant thinking. The term ego means different things to different people, but when we use it here, it means a false self, created by unconscious identification with the mind. To the ego, the present moment hardly exists. Only past and future are considered important. This total reversal of the truth accounts for the fact that in the ego mode, the mind is so dysfunctional. It is always concerned with keeping the past alive because without it, who are you? It constantly projects itself into the future to ensure its continued survival and to seek some kind of release or fulfillment there. It says, one day when this or that or the other happens, I'm going to be okay, happy, at peace. Even when ego seems to be concerned with the present, it is not the present that it sees. It misperceives it completely because it looks at it through the eyes of the past, or it reduces the present to a means to an end. An end that always lies in the mind-projected future. Observe your mind and you'll see that this is how it works. The present moment holds the key to liberation, but you cannot find the present moment as long as you're in your mind. Okay, so if we want to be free and live a life better than our wildest dreams had once imagined, and note that I said once imagined because, of course, we are not in our minds imagining anymore, right? We're living right now in the moment. And if we truly want to experience life, we need to find and stay in the present, always. But how? Holy people and mystics and scholars throughout the ages have tried to make the how make sense over and over in countless ways, and yet we ordinary people seem no closer to understanding, much less employing their methods. But I found something which may help us identify with one way to begin, and it struck a chord of familiarity with me. And that's a story I'll tell you a whole different day. We got a couple of those in this. I quoted Leonard Jacobson last week from his book, Journey into Now, and it was huge. But today, we're taking a quick look at another of his books, that is, Liberating Jesus. What would Jesus say if he returned today? And he tells this story on page 11. He says, in December of 1981, I decided to attend a week-long personal growth retreat near Bellingham in Australia. Several interesting things happened during this retreat, which I believe contributed to my first awakening. One day, a group of about 8 of the participants were sitting by a tree during one of the morning breaks, and one of the men in the group pulled out a book and said that he'd like to read a paragraph from the book. His name was Kevin, and I recall that the title of the book was The Man by Irving Wallace. He began to read the paragraph, and as he did so, I broke down into uncontrollable tears. When he finished reading the paragraph, I had no clue what he had read and why it affected me so deeply. I asked him to read the paragraph again. He did so, and I broke down again. Still, I did not know what he had read or why it had affected me. This was repeated at least 5 times. And I have to add my own 2 cents here. That Kevin was either incredibly patient or incredibly curious to reread that one paragraph more than 5 times, right? Okay, so he continues. I then asked him to read the paragraph very slowly. Finally, I could hear the words, and I knew what he had read. I believe the quote was as follows: "All man's honors are small beside the greatest prize to which he may and must aspire, the finding of his soul, his spirit, his divine strength and worth, the knowledge that he can and must live in freedom and dignity, the final realization that life is not a daily dying, not a pointless end, but a soaring and blinding gift snatched from eternity." For some reason, those words opened up a very deep wound within me that I'd lived with all my life. It was the feeling that I did not fit in, that I did not belong, and that I'd lived a life according to other people's values and expectations. As all the repressed pain surfaced within me, I knew that it was the beginning of a profound healing. Suddenly I knew where I belonged. It is in the present moment, and I had the overwhelming feeling that the present moment was my true home. The second significant thing that happened during the retreat occurred several days later. The group was sitting in a circle. Somehow the issue of judging oneself and others arose as a topic of discussion. I raised my hand and shared that I was very judgmental of myself. The group leader knew that I'd been a lawyer, so he suggested that I prosecute myself and that the group would be the jury who would then pass judgment on me. And I definitely rose to the occasion. I had been a good lawyer, and so I made a very strong case against myself. I shared all the things I thought were wrong with me. I shared all the judgments I had of myself. I was ruthless. After about 10 minutes, I rested my case. I was convinced that I would be found guilty and that I would be condemned. To my utter surprise, the jury handed down its verdict. Not only do we find you not guilty, but we love you. Once again, I collapsed into tears. Since that moment until the present day, judgment of myself and others simply dissolved. So let's get this all straight. He went into this retreat hoping for personal growth and suddenly found himself sobbing after another participant read a paragraph from a book. More than 5 times in a row. Darling, patient Kevin. And when at last he realized what about the paragraph moved him, he found that it brought back into sharp focus feelings that he'd carried with him from childhood into that very moment of not belonging, of always being different, of not only not fitting in, but of there not even being a place for him to try to fit in. How many of you remember feeling that way in your childhood? Feeling like you just didn't belong? How many of you remember feeling that way as an adult? How many of you can say that you still maybe kind of sort of feel that way sometimes? Yeah, me too. However, I've grown to love my not fitting in this quite a lot. You too? I wouldn't have it any other way, but that's another long story for another day. So he felt like he didn't fit in. And then sweet Kevin's redundant paragraph opened his eyes to an incredible truth. All of the things that society tells us are important, the things we get mired in trying to live up to or become, they aren't what make life amazing. It's seeking to answer our soul's calling, to recognize our divine inner self, and finally realize that this life we are each blessed to be living is, in every moment, whether we judge those moments good, bad, or ordinary, it's an incredibly wonderful gift. And I've said this before and I've meant it every time. To me, life is like a wonderful amusement park. And we're the lucky ones who got tickets for the day, because really, how long is the human lifetime within the span of eternity? So we got tickets for the day. And we could spend our day looking down at that handy navigation map they always hand us and planning where we want to go and what we want to see and what ride to get on, and hopefully finding most of those plans and paths fulfilled, and at least somewhat consistently ending up where we hoped, experiencing what we'd hoped for the most part. We could spend it watching other people and trying to imitate or be like them, to follow in their footsteps, hoping to experience the joy that we perceive and assume they're experiencing. Or maybe we could end up with a blister on our foot, a sunburn, or some other type of painful owie. How many people have been to an amusement park and gotten a blister or a sunburn or another painful kind of owie? All of us. But in this case, if you get that and then spend the rest of the day nursing that pain and then evaluating every step and every choice so we can avoid being hurt again, what is happening to our experience? Or perhaps we, like so many people seem to be doing these days, we spend our entire trip looking at a screen. This screen being the one in our minds, only occasionally glancing up from the information our screen is feeding us and never actually having a complete, connected experience. Or, and I don't think this is outside the realm of possibility for anyone, or we could just walk. We could walk without a plan, without forethought or meticulous preparation, without hesitation or expectation, and look around at all of those incredible wonders which have been laid out for us to see, at all of the magic created just for us to experience. We can hop onto any ride which appeals to us as we wander that park of life, and we can experience shows and parades to make us laugh and sing and dance, or move us to tears, or fill us with indignation at the antagonists in the story. We can hop onto roller coasters which inspire feelings of peril or fear, but which always blessedly come to an end, as do all of the most frightening, painful moments of our lives. Or perhaps ride the comforting ups and downs of the carousel horses sometimes. Or we could go with the flow in the boat of life, exploring fantastic lands and tasting exotic foods from a limitless menu, perhaps while little children in colorful costumes sing to us about how tiny and wonderful the world is. And the thing is, it's my experience and observation that we all spend parts of our lives, our human amusement park experience, embodying each of these, except perhaps the last. Sure, most of us have had moments of unbridled, fearless wanderlust, haven't we? But a whole heck of a lot of time, we quickly end up finding something we want to imitate, or someone thrusts a map into our hands and we choose to follow it, or we get hurt and spend time both nursing our wounds and doing everything we can to avoid getting hurt again. And many of us let that hurt change who we are so much that we end up stuck in a constant state of pain and fear. Or we spend great swaths of time simply content with looking at that screen in our mind and never really experiencing anything for real. Perhaps we feel like it's safer that way. So And I know this will definitely work against attaining life in the now, but maybe take a moment to evaluate what you've been doing with your ticket to life. What type of amusement park visitor have you been most of the time, and which type would you like to be? And here's the coolest part of my amusement park analogy. You always have a choice in which type of visitor you want to be. There's never a moment when you're unable to choose a different way of experiencing this gift of life. How, you ask? As Tolle says on page 40, use your senses fully. Be where you are. Look around. Just look. Don't interpret. See the light, shapes, colors, textures. Be aware of the silent presence of each thing. Be aware of the space that allows everything to be. Listen to the sounds. Don't judge them. Listen to the silence underneath the sounds. Touch something, anything, and feel and acknowledge its being. Observe the rhythm of your breathing. Feel the air flowing in and out. Feel the life energy inside your body. Allow everything to be within and without. Allow the isness of all things. Move deeply into the now. And if that doesn't feel like it's helping, try this from Osho's book, Trust. This is on page 185. He says, start dancing, singing, and you will be surprised. You will experience a great truth that it changes, that the climate changes, that the clouds disappear, that it becomes sunny, and you are different. In the beginning, it will again be just like acting, but soon you will get into the act because all that you are doing is nothing but an act, so it can be changed. That's the big sentence. All that you are doing right now and at any moment in your life is just an act, and it can be changed. He says what you call your authentic life is also just an act. Maybe you have practiced it for a long time, but it is also an act. So it can be changed for another act. And once you have learned the trick of changing your acts from one to another, you'll be able to see your freedom. You are something beyond the acts. So join me. Let us put down the map. Stop looking for footprints to follow or others to emulate. Take off the Band-Aid and see that the wounds of the past are in the past. And then surrender those scars that you've carried into each future moment and let those move into the past as well. Turn off those mental screens that we've all stared at for far too long and come and play with me in the now. Hop into the boat alongside me and let us enter the flow to discover just how magical and wonderful and beautiful and thrilling and immeasurably precious this life is. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Gina. So this is now our time for sharing. So will the ushers please come forward? Through our gifts, safely given, we enter into the great flow of universal abundance and collective. And in accordance with our gifts, we are blessed in time. So please take your offerings in your hands and repeat our offertory blessing twice with me. God, you are the source of all my good. We love